And I guess in the same way for me, it was, it would have, I worked very hard to make sure that nobody knew. It was something that, for whatever reason, just society in general, culture here in Fresno, culture with the people that I interacted with, it was not going to be okay. There was also a transgendered boy, I guess a transgendered girl at my high school. I was in high school in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and she was harassed every day, all day. I remember thinking to myself, if I ever said anything to anybody about my feelings, I'm afraid that I would be like her, that I would be harassed, and that whatever, she was treated terribly. And even beyond that, I still believe, or I still was treated terribly, and just in everyday interaction. So I think that's because kids are mean, and they don't think about things. But yeah.
Would you say that it was your biggest fear that somebody would find out?
Absolutely.
Hands down. Hands down. It's one of
everything.
Yes, I think more so than you don't, because you hear the war stories. You see what happens. You hear of the kid that got kicked out of his home, or and is on the streets, or is no longer welcome at church, or is no. You don't know what's at stake because you don't know how people are going to respond, and you see the full spectrum, and so you can't risk any of that, and so it just becomes this fiercely guarded thing. And I think more for me, it was not so much people finding out, but I didn't want to disappoint. I was a part of this community that I cared about tremendously, and these people who invest in you, or when you're working with youth or at camps, and these people trust you, and so to feel like possibly that you violated that trust because you weren't open or honest, because you didn't want to lose that job, you didn't want to lose that position. You wanted to be involved, you wanted to serve, you wanted to be part of that community, and giving back in the same way, investing that I was when I was, that age, and so you didn't want to disappoint, and you didn't want to. I didn't want to freak people out. I didn't want ever, especially when you aren't in a position of trust, working with whoever, you want to be a safe space, and so if that is ever compromised, that I think would be more, that would crush me if I ever felt like someone didn't feel safe or comfortable with me, and so I think that was the biggest, hide it so that that's not even an option or a thought in their mind. I mean, I would hope, I don't think that I did that very well, but that was the goal.
At what point did you start to question what you had been told, or maybe not told, God felt about your sexuality?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay, so I did date two girls. They weren't very long relationships, but the second one, I decided that at this point I had decided to be straight, and that's what I had decided. So anyway, this girl that I dated, there came a point where our relationship was getting more serious, and I'm talking 4 weeks in. It's real serious, guys. But the important thing was that I was going to have to start lying to her. I wasn't attracted to her. I didn't even like to kiss her. I mean, it was, that's another story for another day. But at that point, that breakup, it led me, that was the breaking point for me as well. And it made me think, this isn't going to work. I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to lie to people. I'm not going to, so I just wasn't for a while. That was the breaking point where I started thinking something has to change because this isn't okay.
And was part of it, you used the term lying.
Mm-hmm.
And so before there was this negative connotation of your sexuality, so much so that you denied it.
Yeah.
So you got to the point of saying the lying is the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, when you're this is what I thought. So when you're in a heterosexual relationship, so you go out on a date and you go pick up the girl in the car and then you open the door for her and then you go and you have a nice time. You take her out to dinner, you pay for a meal, and then you take her back to her house and you open the door and then you kiss her goodnight and eventually you have to say, oh, you're so beautiful and this and that and right? I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, right? That's what the media tells us to do. That's what we all dream about. But I didn't really feel that way about her. She's a very nice girl. Very, very nice. And she was beautiful, but not to me. Not in the way that it needed to be for me to commit myself to somebody to be in a lifelong relationship.
And was there a shift in your theology, your just understanding of what you had been told is not lining up with how you are feeling?
Can you ask that another way?
So you had been told, or you had come to believe that God did not want you to be this way.
Yes.
And there was a shift, there has been a shift.
Yes.
Where you have become okay, more than okay. You believe that God loves the way that you are, and that you have been created that way.
You're talking about today, right now.
Today,
Right now,
here we are now.
I'm not pretending to be straight anymore. No. I'm not pretending to date girls.
Right. So
yes.
Where did that shift
start?
Start.
So it started. It was a long process. It wasn't just an overnight like, oh, the light's on. It started there, and it didn't end until I told my mom and dad that I was gay, and that was a while back now, 2009 in the springtime. So that was a 3 or 4 year period, and it was pretty dark, a pretty dark period for me. I didn't participate in church a whole lot. I didn't participate in a Christian community, even though I was working at Calvin Crest, which is essentially a Christian community. Yeah, it was it was about 3 or 4 years of wrestling at that point.
Jamie, was there a point where you felt God say, this is who you are, this is how you have been made, and I love you as who you are?
I think it was more of a realization coming, not even like, it wasn't an on paper relationship, but knowing that I had feelings for somebody and at that, like, trying to make sure that didn't happen, and then it did. And so understanding the weight of that reality, okay, this is like, even that aspect I can't control. And so this could just come up. And so it was one of those, like, okay, no, it's not a non-issue, this is for real, and like, you're gonna have to figure out what you're gonna do with this. And so that, it kind of, I think in the same way, triggered just a season of that wrestling, which coincidentally was at Calvin Crest as well, when I was on staff there during the year. And it was, I don't know that anyone would have been happy to be around me at that point. It was not was not in a happy place, but it was a good place because it was a wrestling time, and it was a place of actively engaging with God on this thing. That it was like, I'm not going to be able to move forward until we kind of get this settled, and having the time and space to be able to come through that. And so what that wrestling entailed was a lot of having a reference point for my feelings for someone in particular, and kind of having that relationship as kind of a foundation for examining that. So kind of like just like evidence for me to look at on a closer scale, and kind of as your reference point. It was, and to be able to talk with God about that and kind of over that and have that as a thing, and not just like this theoretical, feelings out here, and evaluating that and going like, God, I know that these feelings aren't any different than any feelings anybody else has, and knowing that. And I think anybody who has connection with the Holy Spirit can understand the difference between guilt and conviction. And so it was one of those like, this is not something I'm convicted about. This is not something that it's something that I feel like is this imposed guilt for these feelings. And so it was this moment of, like, no, God, I know we're good. Like, I know that we're good. And any conviction that came in was on the lines of lying about it. And so that's where I felt that unrest, and that's where I felt that unease, and that's where I felt that sick inside feeling of that's not okay, and that needs to change. And that's something that was what I woke up with every day that I hated. And for someone who wants to live and be in an authentic place and be genuine and connect with people on a genuine level, that was just something that became unacceptable for me. And so when the tipping point, I think, came when it was this, like, I became more afraid of who I was going to be if I kept lying and kept not being myself than who I would be if I became who everyone wanted me to be. And that, I knew, grieved his heart more, I think, than anything, was that, yes, I created you to be this person, and you're not living into that, and you're not, you're hiding who I created you to be, and you can't live fully until you're in that place. And it was kind of like, just step out, just trust me, and like, we'll kind of take it from there. And so that was kind of that process.